The following is a conversation with Bobby Donohue, founder of Planet Bonehead, a groundbreaking educational platform teaching kids about climate change and sustainability through creative storytelling. Bobby's journey from branding executive to climate education advocate is a testament to the power of purpose-driven innovation. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Bansala. Today, we'll explore Bobby's mission to inspire the next generation to care for the planet, uncovering real stories and actionable insights that matter. Let's dive in. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sid, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Your career has taken, let's say, a fascinating turn from branding to climate advocacy. Let's start with the beginning. What inspired your transition from branding and marketing to climate education?
Yeah, it wasn't like one day I just was like, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I'm going to do this other thing anymore. It was kind of like I was doing both of them for roughly 15 to 20 years. And slowly but surely, it got to the point where the branding work just wasn't cutting it for me anymore. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get more into doing the creative work, just making the content that I love to make, and the Planet Bonehead, the education thing. It was there. It was just it's necessary, and I was just able to do that more and more. And now it's just what I do all the time. Mm-hmm. So it was a very slow transition. It was almost like if you weren't looking, there was never a day that I was just like snap my finger and now I'm doing this. It was weird.
Yeah. Was there a specific moment, let's say, realization that made you pivot your career?
I would say that there were a few such moments, but the most recent one, I think, for me was the introduction of AI into my workflow. Mm-hmm. The ability to use AI tools. I know that some people frown on AI like it's cheating or, like it's doing the work for you, but I think if you're using it correctly, it's just a tool like anything else. The difference between I'm trying to build a house with my bare hands compared to I'm using a hammer and nails and a saw. It's like the tools make it easier. I could do it the other way, but it's going to take me a lot longer. So when I realized that there were certain things that I could do with AI that I could not do before, it allowed me to do more of this myself, which is kind of why there was a pause in Planet Bonehead production for many years. It used to be me and several other people, but they all left, and then it was just me, and it wasn't possible for me to do everything by myself. So AI is kind of filling in the gaps of what these other people did that now I can do it on my own, in my own way. So I'd say that was the most recent aha moment. There were probably 25 others, but that one really changed the game for me because it made Planet Bonehead what it is today, which is radically different from how it started.
Yeah. Bobby, what's your take about AI?
I love AI. I think that AI has far more positives than negatives. And I understand people's negatives. I understand people being afraid of things, but people are afraid of automated tools that they're going to lose jobs and things like that. And I get that on a macro level, but I think if we all individually looked at AI on a micro level or on an individual level and said, how can I use it to better my life? If everybody were able to do that, we would all find a way where I don't need that job anymore. I can now do this thing. People don't generally think that way. They think I won't have that old job that I'm used to having anymore because AI can do it for me now. And so what does that mean? You're just going to crawl under a rock and die? It doesn't. You'll find something else to do, So I think that if we all could look at it as a tool, how can this make my life better? And how can it make my work better that I can now better the world around me, whether that's the whole world or my community or my family or my job? It doesn't matter, because it can if you look for it, and if you looked for it, you'll find it. Yeah. So I think AI is amazing. I know that there are negatives to it too, and I know that it uses resources, and I think we'll figure all of that out. But I think as a step in human development, it's up there with the wheel and fire. I mean, it's incredible.
All right. So let me ask you another question, which is not part of our episode today. 2 days ago, in the Oval Office, there was this huge announcement. President Trump, he announced 500 billion US dollar investment with OpenAI, Sam Altman, and the chairman of Oracle, Larry Ellison. What's your take on that?
I'm going to be honest with you, Sid. For my own sanity, I've decided to stop paying attention to politics for a little while because I find myself wanting to put my head through a wall. I think that Trump can say a lot of things that sound good. You know, if he meant what he said, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. If that were what we did, that would be great, you know. But I've already lived through 4 years of him, and he doesn't ever do the things he says he's going to do. So whatever he announced is irrelevant to me because that's not what's going to happen. He's going to do something that makes him rich. That's it. And something that makes the people around him richer, and it's not going to help you. It's not going to help me. And I've stopped hoping that it will. So I that might not be the answer you were hoping for.
No, it's okay.
But that's the answer that I have today.
It's an opinion.
Yeah, and it's an opinion based on hard lived experience. So I refuse to be Charlie Brown running to his Lucy holding the football, if you know that reference.
But I'm glad I asked you that question. Since we're talking about AI and 500 billion US dollar, it's not small amount.
Yeah, that thing specifically, I don't know much about. So you know, that could be a good thing. I don't know. $500 billion invested into AI sounds like you know, like investing into infrastructure. But in the first 4 years of Trump, it was infrastructure week every week, and we never did a thing. So I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for that to transpire. I don't know.
Let's see. Bobby, the name Planet Bonehead is unique and intriguing in the same time. It feels like there is a great story behind it.
There is a story. Maybe it's great. I think it's definitely a unique name. Part of what I do is I wanted it to have a unique name for the sensationalism of it. It catches your attention. You know, when you say climate change education, people go, "Oh, great! You know, we really need that," but it's kind of a yawn, and everybody just forgets about it 5 minutes later. I don't think you forget the name Planet Bonehead 5 minutes later. I think that, you know, I'm doing climate education. That's nice. I'm doing climate education with a program called Planet Bonehead. People perk up, you know. It catches your attention and holds it a little bit longer, and it creates curiosity. People want to know what it's about. The story behind it is kind of mundane because it started with a character named Bonehead before it was environmental. And we were just playing, there were other people involved at the time. We were playing around with just the idea of making a funny character. And the character's name was Bonehead, and I was creating these characters that were bones come to life. But we wanted to make it something more and make it meaningful. We had kids at the time. My kids were very little. My partner's kids were very little. We were both into the environment, so we decided to make it something for kids to teach them about the environment. So that's where Planet Bonehead came from. And if I were reverse engineering it a bit, it was kind of like, you know, it's kind of boneheaded the way we're treating this planet. And really off the scale, Planet Bonehead begins with a B, and there is no Planet B. So it's, you know, that's another thing. But that's kind of just in my head. I don't know that anybody else gets that.
Wow. It's nice. I love it. How did the concept evolve from a fun character to a full-fledged educational platform?
Yeah, it's still the fun character. The fun character part never went away. And that was always the most important part to me, because I felt that if we were to just make it the educational part, it would be too dry. The same thing with the name. You got to catch the kids' attention. And the name can only do that for so long. But I feel like when you're teaching stuff to kids, especially something like climate change, you can, if you don't do it correctly, you can scare them rather than inspire them.
Yeah.
So the part with the characters and the fun and all of that is really designed to introduce the topic in a lighthearted way so that we can kind of get the groundwork in. Oh, recycling is important, and here's why. And if we don't do it, this can happen. But we're doing it in a fun slapstick way that's not scary. And then when we get to the parts that are like, well, this is really important, and here's why, and here's the educational parts, it's building upon the fun part, you know. So and then the whole show ends with empowerment. So there's a song that gives kids the ideas of what they can do at home and at school. So I have to put in some of the doom and gloom stuff just to let them know this is what the problem is and this is why it's important. But here are the solutions, and here are the people working on it, and here's green tech that we have, and here's things you can design, and here's something you could go home and do with your family, or here's something you could do as a class, you know, that makes a difference today. And the characters are just built into that. So I try to bring the fun and the laughs into it as much as I can.
Yeah. And what challenges did you face in bringing your vision to life?
Oh, a lot. So in the very beginning, we didn't know, like, let's make this a thing for schools. We were just making it into like a TV show that was educational. And the first challenge we had was getting anyone to care about it. Everybody thought it was a great idea, but nobody wanted to do anything with it. For example, we brought it to Nickelodeon and all those other to PBS Kids and things like that. And we were doing the pitching for shows, and we'd hear the same thing over and over again. Wow, this is a really cool show, but we don't do anything educational for kids over, you know, from kindergarten and older. We only do educational for preschool. And so they're like, if you could turn this into like a SpongeBob, just a plain old funny show, then you know, come back and pitch that. And we didn't want to do that because we had a purpose behind this, you know, and making a show for Nickelodeon wasn't the goal. It was the way to get the goal done, you know. So we were like, well, if that's not going to work, let's figure out a different way to do the goal. The next hurdle was not so much a hurdle, was a success. We found distributors that sold DVDs to schools, and the distributors loved it. And plus, it was so they wanted the educational stuff. So they started selling it to schools on DVD. A couple of years after that, DVDs started waning, and streaming became the main thing. And so a little over 10 years ago, maybe 13 years ago, they switched completely to streaming. And so ever since then, it's been streaming into classrooms across North America. And then this past year, I got it into more distributors that are global. They're in another 86 something countries. So it's expanding that way. So I think that was the biggest challenge, was making the show in the first place, because everybody liked the idea, but nobody wanted to help. You know, it was a little out there, and it wasn't. You know, when you're opening a hardware store, everybody understands that business model. But when you're saying, I want to create something that's going to transform climate change education in America or on Earth, everyone's like, yeah, we need that. Good luck. You know, it's like they nobody wants to step up and do it with you. So I think that was the original challenge. I'm finding it to be less of a challenge now, but it was definitely the biggest challenge in the early days.
Yeah. Why do you think climate education is missing from most schools' curriculums?
Yeah, this is an easy one to answer. There are three reasons. Teachers lack the knowledge, the resources, and the support to do it. The one thing they have, which is crucial, is desire. Teachers want to teach this, parents want this stuff to be taught, kids want to be learning it, but nobody really knows how. There aren't large curriculum things all ready for them to go. So the knowledge, resources, and support. Teachers are prone to being victims to misinformation as much as anybody else. So when it comes to climate change, who are you listening to? And even if you're listening to people you trust, there are plenty of other people you trust that are telling you the opposite. And, you know, scientists don't agree, but they do. And, you know, and so for teachers who aren't climate scientists working in this field day in and day out, who do you listen to? You don't know what the answers are. And so they lack the knowledge to speak about it with confidence, because they're like, wait, is that true or is that a myth? I don't even know. So that's one thing, is teachers just don't know this stuff. They also lack the resources. They don't have the video courses. They don't have textbooks. They don't have lesson plans. There's just not much out there for them to use unless they do tons and tons of work to put it together themselves or create it themselves, and they don't have the ability to do that. And then finally, they lack the support. There are many communities, I'm sure globally, but definitely here in the United States, that frown upon even talking about climate change. It's a hoax. I don't want my kids learning this, and we don't want that in our districts or this and that. And so teachers are kind of abandoned on these topics, left out in the cold. They're afraid to bring it up. They're afraid to get in trouble with the administration of their school district, the presidential administration. But so those are the things they lack, and those are the things I'm trying to do with Planet Bonehead, is bring those three elements to them with courses for teachers, and of course the climate units to teach the kids, and support systems.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think we made this issue complicated to understand. We politicized completely this issue. I think that everyone believes that the climate is changing, and it's been changing all the time. The problem is not there. It's just the issue, the root cause. Some folks, they believe, and the science back up that, some folks believe that climate change is the consequence, the result of human activity. And then the rest is kind of climate, that it's a hoax. But what everyone wants to have clean air, clean water, and clean soil, And if we focus less on the CO2 emissions or let's say trying to politicize the whole topic and maybe we can change a little bit the mindset. And we talk about the educational system and the climate education within the school curriculum. Personally, what I heard from you, and I read some stuff, I think your solution, Planet Bonehead, can fill this kind of gaps.
Well, thank you. I that's what I'm hoping as well. Was there a question there specifically, or am I just commenting on what you
that
said?
was just my opinion.
Yeah, well, you said something that if it's okay, I just wanted to comment on, because we've politicized this, and that really is the crux of the problem here. Do you remember years ago when we were younger, the hole in the ozone? There's this hole in the ozone, right? And we're all going to get cancer or whatever the heck is going to happen. And
the whole thing started with the spray, with the canisters, with cooling gas and stuff.
That's
like
right.
Yeah.
Now, do you realize that we don't talk about that problem anymore?
No, we don't.
And the reason is because we stopped using those sprays and those canisters, and they changed the technology behind them.
And sorry, Bobby, to cut
fine.
you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's funny you're talking about this, and now I remember for months, for years, the whole discussion, the whole obsession about how big is that ozone hole?
Yeah,
is it
bigger and bigger and bigger? Yeah.
How big is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't talk about it anymore is because they fixed it. The scientists said, "Hey, this is the problem. We're using this stuff, and it's these aerosol sprays are emitting whatever it was, and it's destroying the ozone layer, and we have to stop doing that." And the governments around the world started passing laws, and they changed how we still have our spray deodorants and stuff, but we just changed the technology behind it so that it doesn't emit that stuff anymore, and the problem fixed itself. The hole closed up. So climate change is the same thing. Scientists are saying, "Oh, hey, here's another thing where now instead of the spray stuff, we're burning fossil fuels, and that's putting stuff in the air. And why is that one getting politicized when the other one, everybody was just like, well, then let's fix that." The reason is because there was no big aerosol industry that was trying to stop it. There weren't huge corporations and then political parties following them trying to say, no, aerosols are fine. The ozone hole has always been getting bigger. Like, we didn't do that with that because nobody cared. We could switch from this technology to this technology. Everybody still made money. Everybody still got the products they wanted. And it didn't affect anybody, so we closed the hole. We did it. Good job, humanity. But this one, it's going to affect some people's pocketbooks because they don't want us to stop using oil and use windmills. And that's why we have, these politicized discussions and people saying, well, the climate has always been changing. Sure it has. We had an ice age 13,000 years ago, but, it didn't happen in 30 years. It just didn't happen in the course of one human being's lifetime. It happened in the course of generations. It took thousands of years for it to go from this climate to this climate. Now we're doing it since the Reagan administration. It's ridiculous. So politicization of this is because of corporate interests, and that's really what the problem is. Yeah. If we could eliminate that.
Good luck with that.
Yeah,
Good luck. Yeah, Bobby. Let's go back and talk about kids.
Okay. Yeah, thank
Kids
you.
have this incredible ability to see the world in a clear and honest way.
Yes.
Let's talk about their potential. You've said kids approach climate issues with the mindset. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Thank you very much for bringing the topic back to this, because you can see why I put my head through the wall when I'm talking about politics. And this is really the reason that I wanted to do something for climate change, but I knew if I were just somebody out there trying to talk people into change, recycle more, like I'd be banging my head against the wall on that. But talking to kids is a completely different thing. You show a kid a beautiful vista and they're just going to know, hey, should we keep this a beautiful vista or a beautiful park, or should we turn it into a dump? They'd be like, why would we turn this into a dump? That's ridiculous. But adults don't do that. Kids just have a sense of awe of the world, and because as human beings, we're born with that awe, that sense of awe, that sense of commonality, that sense of we're all in this together, so to speak. And they don't yet really have that zero-sum game attitude that if you are gaining something, that means I have to lose something. To a kid, they understand the concept that we can all gain, and I think that that's something that we keep nurturing throughout preschool and the early grades of school, but we forget to keep nurturing that in education, and it gets to the point where by the time they're out of high school, it's just what job are you going to get, and how are you going to contribute to this society? And it's almost like we're trying to hammer that out of them so that they become the cynical adults that most of us are. I knew that if I can't reverse that, I can't undo what's already been done to adults. I can't bring that sense of awe back to adults, but I knew I could nurture it in kids. If it's already there, I can make things that are going to sort of keep it going for them. So that's why Planet Bonehead is not about the doom and gloom of climate change. It's about optimism and empowerment. I want them to be optimistic about their future, and I want them to feel empowered to do something today that is a benefit to everybody. And so that's why I'm doing it this way. I think the attitude that kids have of just like, duh, the earth is important, it's just innate. I don't think that we teach them that. I think we teach them how to stop thinking that way, and I would prefer to not do that.
Yeah. Can you tell us a story or two about how a child responded to Planet Bonehead?
Yeah, in the early days, one of my early partners actually, I mentioned we both had little kids. His kids were a little older than mine, so they were already in school. And he went and did a talk in his kids' class and showed them Planet Bonehead. And at the time, it wasn't the program it is today. It was just the characters and some things we were writing and talking. And I made a little cartoon video, and it was really bad. But, we showed it to them and told them what it was about. And they loved it. they absolutely loved it, and they wrote notes to him. Thank you for coming to our class and showing this to us. And because it just gave them that sense of excitement about their world that they don't generally get every day. A few years later, a different partner that I was working with, we did focus groups in South Carolina, and she was doing the actual course. By this time we had more of the classroom program. The one that was being streamed into classrooms was completed, and we knew that teachers were using it and that our distributors loved it, and teachers were using it. We were getting our royalty and viewing reports, so we knew it was being used consistently, but we weren't really hearing feedback because we weren't directly connected to the teachers using it. So we did this focus group, and the kids would just write things. I still have the papers somewhere. It's like, I love T-Bone. He's my favorite because of this. And it was all about the characters. The characters really struck a chord with them, which is why I like to bring the characters into as much of this as I can, because that's the part that captures their attention initially, but it holds their imagination. And I think they can relate to them more than just the dry science, So, yeah. Planet Bonehead isn't, I don't go into classrooms and do this class to class. So I don't get the direct personal relationships with the children. But personally, when my kids were little, I showed it to them and my friends, and they all loved it too. So any kid that I've ever heard of that saw it loved it, and that's just always been a driving force for me to keep going.
Yeah. Every great mission faces challenges, and I imagine scaling Planet Bonehead hasn't been easy. What's been the hardest part of scaling your platform, the Planet Bonehead?
The hardest part has been figuring out what the business model is. I've always had the product. I just never knew what's the best way to sell it. Who do I want paying for it? And I've been trying different things. And I think too, because my skills are in the creation part. I wish that I could tell you that I'm this entrepreneurial mastermind but I'm not, and I'm just floundering around trying to figure this out. So the past couple of years, I was really trying to do corporate social responsibility partnerships where my vision was that companies would pay for this as part of their ESG program or part of their corporate social responsibility programs, and so that I could give it to schools for free. That was like my ambition for this. But again, I was hearing a lot of people saying, "Wow, that's a great idea. Good luck with that." I wasn't getting anybody that was actually opening up their checkbooks, and some people were saying like, well, are you a nonprofit? Because maybe if you were a nonprofit organization, then you could get people to donate to this. And that I didn't want to go that route. So now today I've sort of, I'm not going to say I abandoned the ESG and CSR aspect of it. It's still there, but it's not where my main energy is focused. Now what I'm doing is I'm focusing on creating this as a package for schools, and I'm bringing it to principals and superintendents, and I'm trying to make it as inexpensive as possible so that any school that wants it can get it. Luckily, I don't have the overhead of, say, like Discovery Education or something where, they might be putting millions into programs, and I'm bootstrapping this. So, if I can make enough to pay my bills, I'm happy. Yeah. And so I want to get as many schools as I can involved, but it looks like going directly to schools is going to be an easier path than trying to get companies to pony up the cash. That's been the hardest part for me, is figuring out the business model that works.
Mm-hmm. And have you tried options when it comes to funding? Let's say maybe out there is some government locally or
Yes, I have. Most of the federal grants or state grants that I found here in the U.S. are for, like, the first thing is to be eligible for it, you have to be a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 under the IRS, and I'm not. So most of what I was able to find, I'm just right off the bat not eligible for. that kind of took the wind out of my sails for it, because suddenly it was just like, all right, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to spend the next however many months or a year transitioning my entire business into this other model? And now I'm a nonprofit organization, and this is my thing. I don't want to turn it into some other thing that other people are controlling. And it's also, it doesn't feel right for me to do it that way, so I looked into it, but it didn't pan out to the extent that I looked into it,
Yeah. When you look at the purpose of your project, there is no question mark there. It's here. It's just trying to align profit with purpose.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a tricky situation you are in. It's funny, you talked earlier about ESG programs, and listening to you, I have friends that they had some project, not similar like yours, and their first thought or their first initiative is to approach companies where they are heavily focused on this aspect, the ESG. Mm-hmm. And the feedback was exactly like yours.
I think when it comes to ESG stuff, it's easier for companies to do certain things where this isn't bad mouthing people or anything like that, but a company has to be profitable. That's just, and a CEO or a CMO or a business development person could look at Planet Bonehead and be like, this is a valuable thing for society. It would certainly be valuable for our company to have our name on it, or to be a part of it, or to back it in some way. But it doesn't always make business sense for them when they also need to do all the other aspects of ESG. They need to reduce it's easier for them to reduce their carbon footprint, because those are solid metrics, than it is for them to do something for the social aspects. And I tried to make that easier by creating a social metric where, we're measuring the exact number of teachers and students that you're affecting with what you're putting into it. And when I would speak to people in business about it, they would say, like, this is brilliant. What a great idea. But, it's like, I've got the best mousetrap, but the people that I'm talking to about it don't seem to care about the mice running around all that much. They're just like, they're not that big of a deal. I can step on them when I see them. Other than that, I don't care. I don't need the mousetrap. And I get that because I was trying to invent a business model, rather than, and I think that was the hardest part that I had at going back to your past question, because then I was thinking maybe I can get people to invest in this to help me sort of with some initial investments to help me get through this first year. I've got the platform built. I don't need investment monies to build the program. I need investment monies to get it out there into teachers' hands, And when I was talking to investors about this, I want to make it where I can give it to schools for free and companies in ESG would pay for it. They didn't like that. The investors didn't like that. They liked it better if I could put this into some kind of formula where this is the problem, these are the people that have the problem, this is how much the problem is worth to them, this is how much they'll pay to fix the problem. That's it. It had to be a straight line, otherwise investors didn't want to know about it. And when I changed that to that, where now I'm going directly to schools, suddenly investors are interested. In fact, last week I got my first investor. So, which is somebody that I would have loved to have as an ESG supporter, but they weren't interested in being that. They were interested now in being an investor as I'm bringing this into schools. So it made me think that, maybe I made up this business model because it made me feel better. I would love to just give this to teachers and schools for free. What a pat on the back for Bobby. Look what he's doing. And that just doesn't seem to fit into the world that well. Also, it turned out that giving things to schools for free isn't much easier than selling it to them. Because schools are still cynical about everything. They need to look at it. Just because it's free doesn't mean they're going to take it and use it. They're still going to do their due diligence on it. And they're still going to look at it. And really the free part isn't all that important to them because they have budgets for these things. So the affordability part is more important. And I think for many people in school districts, something being free might mean that it's not that good, you know? So I had to think about this. I was like, am I doing this for free because it's what people need, or am I doing it for free because it makes Bobby feel better? I don't really know the answer to that question, but we'll see.
Help me here, Bobby. Your value proposition, it's clear. Your business model, it's clear. The product market fit, you did a couple of tests, and the feedback, correct me if I'm wrong, was positive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would add to that, we did years of product testing.
Here we go.
Anything that I make for Planet Bonehead, in order to get into my distributors, has to go through their quality testing. They review everything. And every distributor I've brought this to has not only accepted it, but given it flying colors. So
fantastic.
This made me know that this is the right thing for schools.
Yeah.
And we went to schools directly as well.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Now, you're talking to schools and they see a value.
Yes.
You know, I guess unless there is some complicated bureaucracy or some red tape to get rid of within the school system to get the approval and the funding, it's pretty straightforward.
It is. And to kind of backtrack just a tiny bit, I think part of the reason that I wanted it to be free in the first place was because at first I wasn't even thinking of selling it to schools. I was thinking of this as a program for the teachers, where the teacher was the end user and the customer. And I felt bad personally making teachers pay out of pocket for something that I knew they needed. But now the business model is, I'm not really marketing this to teachers. I'm bringing this to schools, administrations, the superintendents, the principals. And I don't feel so bad if they're paying for it. You know what I mean? Because it's a business to business transaction. It's they have the budgets for it. It's something they need, and they're not out there, they're not out there begging for stuff. And
well, to the principles of your business model. So product market fit, you tick the box, okay?
Yeah.
Client, now we're talking about client. Who's gonna pay my solution to a problem? So your initial thinking, it was not the right one. Now I think it's clear. Then your client is the schools.
Oh yes, I think that now I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
But I wasn't before, and it was a big hurdle.
How long
really
it took to get to where you are, or to, let's say, it's not even pivot. It's just who's going to buy my solution,
Yeah, it's been about a year and a half, I'd say. I think at the maybe 2 years. Towards the end of 2022, I guess. So that's a little over 2 years ago. It was when I was thinking about this as something for teachers. That's when the AI thing started. That's when I realized I could make this the way that I wanted it to be. Up until that point, the entire business of Planet Bonehead was just make the program, give it to the distributors put it in schools. That was it. I was never selling this. I was just making a thing and giving it to distributors.
And Bobby, for the listeners, which age group we are talking about here?
Oh yeah, thank you. It's in the United States, it's kindergarten to 8th grade.
To 8th grade, okay.
To 8th grade, yeah. So that's like 5 years old up until about 13 years old. So the videos I try to make so that kids of all ages can watch the video and get something out of it. There's a little information that the older kids will glean that the younger kids won't. But the lesson plans are broken up into age groups. So in the United States, it's K1 and 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, and 8 is middle school here. And that's generally the age brackets everywhere.
And how the program is structured? Are they chapters or segments or?
Yes. So there are 4 main parts to each. So the program itself is Planet Bonehead. It's teaching kids about climate change. And the way I'm doing it is in units. So each unit covers a different topic. So let's just take, for example, one of the more recent ones is the Smart Recycling Unit. So it's teaching kids about the importance of recycling, the problems with recycling, what landfills are and stuff like that. But then also about the AI solutions and the new green technology solutions that we have for recycling. So the way that I structure the show is, first there's the cartoon part, which is just, the bad guys are trying to destroy the recycling center so they can make more money at the dump and all this stuff, and the good guys got to save the day. And it's just kind of like putting the pieces together and using some of the buzzwords. Then there are two separate documentary segments of the show. The first segment is the problem. This is where I talk about how, a couple hundred years ago, people just used to throw their garbage in the streets, and then they came up with this idea of landfills. Well, landfills are a horrible idea. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but really they're terrible, and here's why. And we talk about methane, and we talk about destroying the water table underneath and stuff like that, and the air pollution. So then we came up with recycling, and then I talk about the problems with recycling. People don't do it correctly. They make mistakes. They put the wrong stuff in the recycling. The recycling centers can't take everything. Companies don't buy the recycled material, these kind of problems. Then we talk about the solutions. Well, here are the solutions to those problems. And I go problem by problem, and I give them a solution that exists today. And this is where it's like, it's not just doom and gloom, like you have to change the way you live because we're all going to die. You can't tell that to kids. They'll go home and they'll cry. It's not going to work. So I introduce them to different climate scientists. I introduce them to different green tech companies that have actual solutions, not things we're thinking of, things that we have, And then the fourth part is something they can do. So there's always a song at the end. And in this case, the song is about recycling, and it teaches them the proper way to recycle. Like it's important not to mix your plastics. If your recycling center only takes 1, 2, and 5, don't put 6 in there. It's going to mess things up. Don't put your shampoo bottle with half a bottle of shampoo. Get it as clean as you can, because all those chemicals in there can ruin the entire batch, So these are the kinds of things that they have the power to do right now. They have the power to do a recycling drive at school. They have the power to go home and talk to their parents about the proper way to recycle. And so that's how the program is structured. The introduction, the problem, the solution, the power.
And the length of how long?
30 to 40 minutes, depending. 30 on the short side, but really no more than 40.
Excellent. And it's kind of, I guess, maybe it's kind of interactive?
Yeah, well, each one of those segments also has a lesson plan. So the videos are 30 to 40 minutes in total.
Yeah.
But they could spend days on a unit, because so for the introduction part, there might be an art lesson plan. For the problem part, there's usually a social justice lesson plan. This is like, how does it affect people, communities that are less well off than other communities. It usually there's a word that just went right out of my head for communities like that. But so I'm trying to also establish how climate change is a social justice issue as well as a scientific issue. It affects certain people more than other people. If you're wealthy and rich and you can afford to live above all of this problem, then it doesn't matter to you if you recycle or not. But if you're not, and if your community is in a place that might get floodwaters that come in, if the tides keep coming up and the sea level keeps rising, and your city might be 2 feet underwater in 100 years, and that might not seem like a big deal. 100 years, I won't even be here, but your grandkids will. We're not talking about the sun exploding in 5 billion years. We're talking about 100 years from now. It's not that far away.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids today will be alive then. So let's talk about what we're talking about here. So the units themselves could go on for days if the teachers wanted to. There's as much for them to do as they want, or they could just use it to fill in the gaps with other things that they have.
Yeah, great. You've stated in our chat that green tech is saving the world and nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Can you share an example?
Yeah, I'll give you my favorite example. So I say that all the time. Green tech is saving the world, but nobody knows about it. And I figured that out by interviewing dozens of green tech people and learning. They're like, oh yeah, we got the solution for that. It's right here. We designed this thing and we designed that thing. And I met people whose individual solutions could make a major impact in the world. but it's just not, we don't have the political will to implement them. One example is talking about recycling. There is a company called Hughes Energy. This is one of my favorite examples. They have a technology solution that is using Jules Verne technology. It's like 150-year-old technology. It is giant metal canisters called autoclaves that use high pressure and temperature. You can take garbage right out of a landfill. Just scoop anything right out of the landfill and put it into this thing, turn it on, and 1 hour later, you open the doors, and all that garbage turned into this fibrous material, which is called Wilson fiber. It's named after the guy who came up with this thing. The Wilson fiber can then be turned into fuel alternatives, like substitutes. You can use it. You can compress it to make a substitute for wood chips or coal. You can do some things to it to turn it into a petroleum substitute. So just about any fossil fuel that we use, we could use this stuff instead, and it burns clean. So we're really solving two big problems with one solution that we've had since the 1850s. We can keep making garbage because, let's face it, we're going to keep making garbage. Despite all efforts to recycle, human nature, we just still consume and we still create garbage. But now we don't have to feel bad about it. Now we can put it into these, instead of putting it in landfills and burying it, we can bring it to these facilities and put it into autoclaves and turn it into Wilson fiber. And now we don't need to drill for oil and dig for coal or whatever we do. We could use this stuff instead. Mm-hmm. But, going back to our aerosol example earlier, if this were the aerosol solution, nobody would care. Everybody would be like, great, let's do it. But it's not, because it's a solution to be a substitute for multi-trillion dollar industries. That don't want this, which is why these solutions exist, but we are not using them. There's no political will to use them because there's no capital in these solutions to fund the world the way that there is with fossil fuel industries.
Yeah. How do you introduce kids to these innovations in, let's say, an engaging way?
You know what? This is going to go back to the question before, because when you show a kid this, hey, kids, look, here's the problem. We make too much garbage in our landfills, and we need to recycle better. But look at this thing we've got. This thing is amazing, and we could solve the whole problem with just this thing. Their thought to that is, well, duh, why wouldn't we do that? The capitalism answer does not compute to them. Well, we could make more money the other way. They would see like, yeah, but if we did this, we would make money this way too, and maybe we could make even more. Yeah, but the same people wouldn't make money. Yeah, they would. They don't have to work in that industry. They could take all those skills and put them over here and do this instead. To them, it's just common sense, And so how do I do it in an engaging way? I do it that way. I just make it seem so like, why would we do it any other way? It doesn't make sense to do it another way. And I think the reason it's engaging to kids is because I don't make kids feel inferior. I don't make kids feel stupid. I don't speak to them like they're little kids. I speak to them like they're human beings, and I speak to their innate intelligence. They may not know things. They may be ignorant of certain parts of the science or certain parts of the industries and things like that. But that's ignorance. That's not a lack of knowledge ability. That's just a lack of knowledge. They haven't been taught it yet. So I speak to them on more of an equal footing, and I try to make it seem like this just makes a lot of sense, and to do it any other way doesn't make sense, and they get that. That's why kids like Planet Bonehead, because I'm not talking down to them in the show. I'm elevating them to our level so that they can kind of shame the people who don't want this stuff. They know it's better for everybody. It's just not better for them today,
And on that, Bobby, why do you think these stories aren't being told?
Again, there's too much pushback. People are afraid. Going back to the lack of knowledge, resources, and support. The reason teachers don't have knowledge is because people don't want them to have the knowledge. People would prefer the misinformation, the disinformation. People would prefer confusion. There's a lot of confusion going on. You mentioned the thing that President Trump did the other day. He's been president now for 3-4 days, right? He has signed 6 trillion executive orders in that time. And there's a reason for that. He did it that way so that it was so much stuff that nobody knows what to focus on. It's an avalanche of distraction. And he knows full well that most of the things he's saying he wants to do probably won't hold up in court or anything like that. That's not the point. The point is to confuse and so that you don't, if he did one horrible thing, everybody be able to point to that and we'd all agree, yeah, that's pretty bad. But if he does a billion things, and a lot of them seem fine on the surface, like what you said, there's going to be a tremendous investment in the infrastructure for AI. That sounds great. I'd be all for that, But I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for it to happen. And he also said he was going to do 7 billion other things that day. And I don't think most of them are going to happen either. The point is just to drive confusion. So this is why teachers don't have the resources they need. They might have them, but they don't know if it's real. Or they might have things that they're told are real, but they're not.
They're not, yeah. The problem is, and it's not only in your country, I see it everywhere. I see it in my industry, the sports industry, which is one of the fastest growing industry in the world. And listening to you, the problems, the challenges you face to take your idea from an idea to physically solution that can contribute positively to the kids' education within schools. There is so many solutions, so many people take so many actions. We said earlier that sustainability, climate change being completely politicized for whatever reason, and we know the reasons. And I'm glad that you brought that ozone example, and I will use it. But then remember, Bobby, during COP in Paris in 2015, when all the countries, all the nations, they came together and they signed the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
For a couple of months, maybe for 1 year, we had this ideology that, hurrah, finally, breakthrough, finally, the entire world came together and we're going to see action. What happened after? Nothing. Yeah. And then during COP 26 in Glasgow, post-COVID, post the pandemic, again, we were talking about every nation, they were talking about net zero. So they put this idea of we're going to reach net zero, and each country and corporations, they start putting, let's say, target 2050. No, we're going to do 2045. No, let's bring it down, 2035, etc., etc. And every year we hear a different story. And now we realize it's not feasible for us to reach that net zero emissions in 2035 or 40, whatever. Let's keep 2050. And every time there is a reason, there is an excuse. And then I say to myself, hang on. There is this idea, this ideology that collide with the reality, How about instead of focusing on targets that we might maybe not reach, how about we make sure we have a clean air, clean water, clean soil? We make sure maybe let's slash our emissions, and there is solution for that. Maybe carbon capture and stuff like that. We look at things differently instead of going completely berserk at fast pace to invest heavily into EV solution, EV vehicle solution. Why we didn't say, hang on, guys, how can we improve the combustion engine within the automobile industry? How can we improve that? Optimize less emissions, make them more affordable. And now most of the countries are cutting back on EV investment. Most of the automakers are facing a huge issue because of China dominating 78% the EV market, then from the logistic point of view, there is not enough charging points. If you want to travel from point A to point B, you need to think, okay, where I'm going to stop, how long is going to take me to charge. If you are driving in a temperature which is below 0 degrees, good luck. Yeah. So it's just we go around and around. And again, thank you for highlighting that example of the ozone. It's exactly the same. Yeah. I see it exactly the same.
Just to say something about that, if somebody could come up with a way to burn gasoline and other fossil fuels that didn't add to the problem in the atmosphere, I'd be for that. Why can't we do that? Nobody ever said that it has to be where we stop using that and we start using these other alternative fuel things. But to my knowledge, I don't know anybody who's come up with a way to burn gasoline in combustion engine vehicles where we don't have the emissions that are causing...
Yes, absolutely. No, still there is emissions, but when we look at, for example, the engines that they are used in Formula One car racing, they are hybrid engines. They are extremely efficient when it comes to emissions, and they're even talking now in 2026, they're changing the regulations. They're going to change the engines because they invested so much into R&D, research and development, not only on the engine itself, but as well on the fuel itself, So why we don't use this breakthrough stuff? I know that some of the Japanese brands, Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi maybe, but mainly Toyota, they are leading the way. They never ever put a huge investment into full EV vehicles, and then they never said that we're going to phase out the combustion engine in a couple of years. Instead, what they did, they focused mainly on hybrid solutions, and the problem now, when you look at all the biggest brands like GM Motors, like Volkswagen in Germany, BMW, Mercedes and things, they are all suffering. Let's talk the road ahead. Let's talk about how people can join, Bobby, your mission and what the future holds for Planet Bonehead.
Great. Anything specific?
You spoke openly, and I hope our listeners they will get a glimpse about mainly your solution and the issues that you faced as well, because you are in the United States, and maybe if it succeed, tell us what's ahead in 5-year, 10-year time. Where do you want to take your solution?
Okay,
or
great.
Where do you see it?
Yeah, going. My vision is that Planet Bonehead is in as many schools as want it. I want to see Planet Bonehead in thousands of schools across the United States, and then globally as well. I know that there are, it's already in Europe. I know that. There's a lot of correlation between the U.S. standards and the standards for the EU standards, and even like in Britain and England, whatever. Sometimes my American exceptionalism shows, so I'm sorry that I don't know things about Europe.
It's okay. It's okay.
And I'm as guilty of it as anyone else in this country. But yeah, but I also know that there are a lot of places in Africa that are lacking any kind of educational resources at all. I've been in touch with people through LinkedIn that are involved in African educational systems, and they're so excited that something like Planet Bonehead exists. It's not really my main focus yet, because I'm trying to just first make it a profitable enterprise so that I can keep doing it. I have to fill my cup before I can fill other people's cups, if you know that story. But in 5 years, what I see is Planet Bonehead as a global solution, as either its own climate curriculum for many schools that have nothing, or for schools that have something, it could be a tool that's used to fill the gaps in their curriculum for science and STEM. education.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah. And Bobby, let's say if a company wanted to partner with you, what's the best
Yes.
way to start?
To connect with me?
Yeah.
It's they can go to planetbonehead.com, and there is a contact form there. Also, the other best way is through LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile. It's much easier to message me there than people email me or call me. A lot of times I don't get it because of spam filters and things. But a LinkedIn message I will always get, and a contact form I will always get. So those are the best ways to reach out to me. I'm always looking for strategic partners in the corporate world for anything, whether it's a licensing thing or an ESG, CSR type of thing, or somebody who's interested in investing. I'm in a pre-seed investment stage right now, so that's what I'm looking for. So anybody who is interested in that or any other thing that I haven't thought of, I'm always open to relationships and networking and joint ventures.
Great. Now it's time for our lightning round.
All right.
Ready for speedy Q&A?
Bring it on. Let's go.
What's the last book you read?
The last book I read, I think the last book I read, I went through a thing where I read a lot of self-help books, and the last one I read was by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think the name of it was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It was a really powerful book, and one that I could probably stand to peruse again because I sometimes find myself getting back into the habit of being myself and getting in my own head with things. But it's that was the last one that I really read and studied. Yeah.
Good. Favorite comfort food?
Well, it used to be pizza, but I think a roast beef sandwich and coleslaw right now might be it. Yeah. Just,
That's nice.
Yeah.
A morning person or a night owl?
All my answers have caveats. I'm more of a night owl, but I have been on a morning person schedule lately because of my family dynamics and my dogs. So I've gotten used to it, and I've acclimated to it. But I think that when those things are no longer a thing, I think I will naturally gravitate back toward being a night owl.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee.
No caveats there.
Clear. Bobby, if you weren't doing this, what career would you pursue?
I'd be an artist for sure, either a musician or in fact, I am pursuing it. I'm doing this, and I'm pursuing a music career, an artistic, creative career. I want to create some kind of storytelling thing, and I'm not sure if it's a comic book or a video series or a movie. And again, I'm kind of waiting on it because I feel like the AI technology is going to come along to help me make it the way I want to make it. So I'm not in too much of a rush to get to it. And then 5 years later be like, oh man, I could have done this. Also, I don't have a lot of time for it right now, but if I were not doing Planet Bonehead, that would be my career.
Favorite childhood cartoon?
Bugs Bunny.
One item you can't live without?
My phone.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't live without it. And you know what? That's not true. I could live without it. I just think that I'd have to get used to it. I don't know that there's any item I can't live without. But that's probably the one that's connected to me the most. So I'll just say that for now. And I don't think it's an unusual answer. Not a great answer, but not unusual. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you could master any skill overnight, what would it be?
I'm going to say martial arts. I just... if I could be like some kind of Jedi ninja overnight, that just because it would be cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what I do with that skill, but
yeah. Some type of let's say Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go looking for trouble, but I wouldn't be afraid of it either, maybe. I don't know.
Fantastic. Who inspires you the most?
I don't know the answer to that question right now because I feel lately that I have been let down by some of my inspirations in the recent past. I used to go through a lot of things where I would read a lot of biographies, and I would read the biographies from the point of view of what I wanted to glean from it, and so somebody that I'm thinking of is Elon Musk. I remember reading a biography of his a little over a decade ago and just being fascinated by his work ethic and, the things that I learned about him from the book, not knowing him as a man at all. And just sort of feeling a little like this guy I'm seeing now is not the guy I read about, so I don't know who inspires me right now. I think my children inspire me.
Okay.
I think they do.
Yeah.
In fact, I know that they do. I used to look outside, but now I think I'm looking forward to what they're doing and seeing them solve problems in their lives and doing the work to solve the problems in their lives that I didn't even know were problems until I was in their 30s, and they're doing it in their late teens and early 20s is just I'm so proud and I'm inspired by them tremendously. So forget the whole thing I just said earlier. Let's just pretend I said that immediately.
If you could have a dinner with a historical figure, who will it be and why?
I'm going to say Jesus because I have so many questions. I grew up Catholic and I'm not really religious at all anymore, but the person of Jesus is extremely it's I have questions about his life, but also questions about like what we do in his name. So much is done in his name these days, and I think I would just like to ask him, like, what do you think of that? And how can I be more? I'm not religious, but and I wouldn't call myself a Christian, but I think that I try to do things as Christ-like as I can, based on what I learned as a child that it meant. Even if a lot of it didn't turn out to be what people actually do, I have a lot of cynicism about religion and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to insult anybody's religion, certainly, but I have a lot of questions, and he'd be the guy.
It's interesting. Is the most common answer I have from my guests.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I did not review your lightning round questions because I wanted to. I didn't want to have answers. I wanted to really do the. So,
but
I didn't know that question was coming.
It is interesting that the majority wants to have a dinner or meet Jesus. Yeah.
I just think that whether you grew up Christian or you are a Christian or anything, he is just such an important figure in our culture at large. Even if you're not Christian, Christianity is just such a large aspect of humanity these days, and again, I don't know what it's like in your country, but in my country, they're very loud, the Christians, and to my knowledge, they're not very Christian. Which
it's very quiet. It's very
it's
flat.
Very disconcerting because and I say that as somebody who spent years in Catholic school. Like I know what the teachings are. You can't tell me what they are. I know what they are, and I know you're not living it. You're saying it, but you're not doing it. So that's probably why my question. Like I'd want the definitive answer. Like, all right, tell me what it is. What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Okay. So one thing on your bucket list.
Oh, that's an easy one. My daughter just went to Italy, and she's on her way home today, as I mentioned earlier to you. And while she was spending most of her time in Venice, she took a weekend trip to Florence, and she went to the Galleria and saw the statue of David. And two art pieces in my life that are very meaningful are the statue of David and Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Starry Night, by luck, is in a museum just 50 miles from my house. I get to see it anytime I want. But the statue of David I've never seen, and she saw it and took pictures of it and took a picture of herself in front of it, and that was such an amazing thing. And I literally said to my wife, "This is on my bucket list. I am going there and seeing this." I don't know anything else that's on my bucket list. I feel like I do most of it, but that's on my bucket list.
Great. And lastly, for our listeners, mainly the youngsters, if you could give a piece of advice or wisdom on any topic.
Yeah. This for the youngsters. Well, you know what? I'm going to say this to anyone of any age, but the youngsters will get this more, I think, because we are born with an innate knowledge and wisdom, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we are born with just this innate knowing that we are part of something bigger, that we are all important to each other, and we're all in this together. But we are also born with this innate knowing that individually we're important. We have an important part to play, and that we have value. And I believe that the world kind of beats that value out of you to the point where you start to question it, and then you start to live your life believing you have no value. So I would say to anybody listening that little doubt voice in your head that says, well, maybe I do have value. That's the truth. That's the real answer. This overarching belief, this pile of dung that we live in that tells you that you're just a meaningless blip in the cosmic everything, that's not correct. And to stop listening to that, because when we get back to that innate knowledge of how important we are and how valuable we are and how much we have to contribute to society and to the world at large as an individual and as a community, that's when we start living our best lives. And if everybody lived their best lives, then everybody's life would be the best.
Yeah. And on that, Bobby Donohue, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and had a great time. Thank you so much.
Before we end the show, I leave you with a few words from Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And Bobby, you embody that message every day.
I didn't know that quote, but I like it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep making a difference. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.